You're listening to Blackpool Church Podcast. Join us for our Sunday gatherings to make friends, explore faith and encounter God. Visit our website, blackpool.church. This is the Talk Archive.
Well, evening, everybody. It's really great to see you. If we've not met yet, my name's Andy. I'm the vicar here. And today we're starting a brand new sermon series, which is running us right up until Easter. And the topic of this series is one last thing. And basically the idea is we're looking at what were the last things that Jesus said to his disciples before his death and then his resurrection. If he had just that one moment where they were gathered in the upper room and they shared the Passover meal together, he had some stuff that he wanted to speak to them about. Well, what were his kind of last things? And we're going to look at those in the run up to Easter. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting and really useful for us and probably really challenging as well. But before we jump into that, I've got a question for you. The question is, what makes you uncomfortable? What makes you uncomfortable? So there's all sorts of things that might make you uncomfortable. I don't know if it's like sounds for you maybe, you know, the sort of like nails on a blackboard thing. Does that make anybody uncomfortable in the room? Or a metal spoon scraping on the bottom of a metal pan, that maybe makes people uncomfortable. What about if stuff doesn't quite finish? So it's like if someone went... Yeah, so you guys, you're the ones that makes you uncomfortable, right? If we don't finish it, it makes you sort of uncomfortable. Maybe it's things in the house might make you uncomfortable, like if somebody leaves the door just a little bit open for no reason and there's a draft coming through that door, that makes you feel uncomfortable. If you come down in the morning and maybe they've done the dishes but they've left the basin with the water in it and it's got that kind of crust that forms on the top and they've left that for no reason, that makes you uncomfortable. The thing that makes me uncomfortable, and the staff make fun of me for this, but it's people putting things in the wrong bins. In the wrong bins. Come on, guys. We've got signs. Plastic in the plastic, cardboard in the cardboard. It's doable. We can do this together. That makes me kind of uncomfortable. What about, you know, that thing we do on a Sunday where I'm like, hey, talk to the person next to you and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we'll talk to the person next to you. What makes you feel uncomfortable? Go. I'm so sorry if the last one was your thing. If you had to turn to the person next to you and say, I'm really uncomfortable having to talk to you, I'm really sorry. That's awful. Hopefully they didn't want to talk to you either, and you both just sat in silence for the last couple of minutes. Yeah. Here's one that I suspect you didn't say. What about love? I'm not talking about like public displays of affection. That makes everyone feel uncomfortable. But what about love? Is that a thing that makes us feel uncomfortable? Well, on first thoughts, you might think, well, no, not really. I don't think love particularly makes me uncomfortable. It was Valentine's Day, wasn't it, just over a week ago? And Nick and I, you know, we had a lovely romantic evening. We ate French cheese and I drank wine and chocolate mousse and sat on a comfy sofa and all of those sorts of things. It was nice. It was lovely. Okay, but how many of you know that that's fine for an evening? But if it was to carry on, then it might turn out to not be love at all. Right, so the second night, if what happened again was she just brought me French cheese and wine and chocolate mousse again, and we sat on the sofa and candles and whatnot, well, then that would be nice still. And maybe if we were away for a weekend, that could be okay. Or maybe if we were on holiday for a week, then we could do a week of just trying to make each other more and more comfortable, and that would be just about okay. But of course, if the days ticked on and the weeks ticked on and the months ticked on, and it turned out that our relationship was just about making each other comfortable. All that happened any day was that Nick just brought me French cheese and chocolate mousse and wine and lit candles and put blankets on me and fluffed pillows and blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, then that would turn out to be no love at all, wouldn't it? Because what would happen, of course, is that I would become, for one thing, very, very fat, but also quite lazy. I think I'd be sort of demotivated. I would definitely be really entitled. And if all of that happened to me because of her actions, well, then that would turn out to be no love at all. And so today I want us to look at a passage in the scriptures that demonstrates Jesus' love. And the topic that I want to speak on is uncomfortable love. So let me read to you from John chapter 13. It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he'd come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel round his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped round him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not every one of them is clean." When he'd finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." So this passage comes to us at really the end and the climax of Jesus' ministry. There's been 3 years of bubbling tensions between Jesus and the religious leaders. And it's kind of grown, and there's been challenges and disputes and arguments bubbling away for 3 years, but then it's begun to grow to a climax. And so on the Monday before this, Jesus has gone into the temple and he's turned over all of the tables in an argument about how they've been behaving. And then on the Tuesday, he gets into a massive row with some of the religious leaders. And then on the Wednesday, we don't really know what happens. But then on the Thursday, he gathers his disciples for one last conversation, one last moment together. And you could think of it a little bit like one of those kind of locker room chats before the Champions League final. This is like Jesus and his team gathered. And something epic is going to happen, something hugely important. This is an extremely dramatic moment, and he's got his key guys and he wants to say something important to them. And so he gathers them together. And the thing that he decides to speak to them about firstly is love. And that sort of makes sense, because I suspect a lot of us might choose love as the kind of last parting word that we would want to speak before we died. A lot of us might want to say something like, "I love you," or "tell so-and-so that I love them," or "Didn't we love it when we did blah, 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 blah." Whatever it was, we would choose to speak about love. And so if you're here this evening and you're looking for love, and I think that's probably all of us in one way or another, I've got good news. The good news is that Jesus, in this passage, wants to demonstrate the way his love works. And I believe it's a love that's on offer for every single person here. That he loves you and he wants to demonstrate for you his incredible love for you. That's the good news. If you're looking for love, I've got it. I've got you. But the bad news is, it's not going to be a comfortable love. It's going to be uncomfortable. And there's all sorts of ways, I think, in which Jesus demonstrates some quite uncomfortable love in this passage. So let's recap and look at some of them. The disciples are gathered with Jesus in this upper room, and they're sharing the Passover meal. And the Passover meal is like a traditional, culturally loaded meal with loads of expectation and excitement connected to it, that's been celebrated by families for generations and generations. So sort of the closest thing that we could relate to is probably Christmas dinner. It's like Christmas Day, and you've got the family, and everybody kind of knows the way it works, but also each family have their own different ways of doing little bits and pieces. So I imagine that it's the same here as the disciples are gathered. There's loads of expectation of the way it works. People have set rules, and Peter and John are arguing about whether stuffing is better than Yorkshire puddings, and James is saying that he wants to have his with ketchup, and everyone's shouting at him because you can't have Christmas dinner with ketchup. It's that kind of event, basically, that we're talking about. And so they gather, and it's exciting, and everybody's presumably catering for one another, making sure that they have what they need. And then something incredibly uncomfortable and awkward happens. Something quite embarrassing, potentially even rude, definitely quite surprising happens. What happens is Jesus stands up from the table and he takes off his outer garment. So it's like you're at Christmas dinner and you've got your shirt on or something, then you think, I'm going to get changed into shorts, right? And he does that. And then goes and gets a basin of water and begins to wash his friend's feet. Now that's pretty weird. That's uncomfortable. That's bizarre. That's strange. That's an unusual thing for Jesus to do. Now, we should note that culturally, people in this time would have had their feet washed often when they arrived for a meal. But there's absolutely no way that their feet would have been washed by the host of the meal. That was something that was reserved only for servants or slaves, and it's now known that traditional Jewish families at the time, they wouldn't have even allowed a Jewish slave to wash people's feet. It would only have been a non-Jewish slave. So this is like the job that absolutely everybody in the room is completely certain that they are above. It's like, you go to your mum, she's like, I'm not doing that. Ask your dad. He's like, I'm not doing that. Ask your sister. Sister's like, I'm not doing that. Ask the dog. Dog's like, wash your own feet. It's that kind of job. Absolutely everybody is determined that this one is not for them. I've been trying to think, what would this be sort of similar to for us? And the closest I can think of is Prince William coming round your house and unblocking your toilets. It's that kind of thing, just wildly inappropriate and shocking and bizarre. And it's no wonder, of course, then, that in the story, Peter reacts so strongly to be like, why would you do this for me? You couldn't possibly do this for me. It's socially awkward and uncomfortable. But what I found is that following Jesus is often quite socially awkward and uncomfortable. That when you follow him, he challenges you to do things that just don't sit well with the people around you necessarily. If you spend time talking to your friends or family or neighbors about Jesus, then sometimes it can just be kind of awkward because you've got mismatched expectations of what's happening. It can sometimes be weird because people aren't expecting it. But if that's you, then you're on the right track. Because Jesus was somebody who consistently rejected social norms. I think about some of the things that Jesus did. One time, he spat on the floor, made mud, and rubbed it in a guy's eyes. That's a crazy thing to do. 6 days before this, he went into the temple, quite a holy and important place, and he just literally trashed people's stalls who were selling stuff. Again, quite a socially awkward thing to do. He broke all of the rules around Sabbath and whether you're supposed to walk or not, and whether you're supposed to heal people or not, and whether you're supposed to eat things or wash your hands in the right way or not. He broke all of those rules. He would have dinner with prostitutes and con men, all sorts of different people. And every time he was breaking social conventions, Jesus is not afraid of being socially awkward. He offers a socially awkward, uncomfortable love. And you should expect to be called into that kind of living as well if you follow him. Okay, but then next up, I think it's also relationally awkward, his love. So there's two verses in this passage that bookend the kind of main event. So the first one is verse 2. And it says this: "The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus." That's the first one. And then the second one is verse 10. It says, "Jesus answered, 'Those who've had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you.' For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, 'Not every one of you are clean.'" And it's interesting because John's account then of the washing of the disciples' feet is bookended by these two passages about Judas, who of course betrayed Jesus and betrayed all of the disciples. And that can only really mean one thing, which is that Jesus washed Judas's feet as well. And I can imagine John as he's writing out his gospel for us. And he's writing it out and thinking back to some of the things that happened when he was with Jesus. Some of the amazing things that happened. And then he gets to this moment in the story and he remembers what it was like to have his feet washed by Jesus. I mean, what an unbelievable, remarkable, distinctive moment, especially after Jesus is raised from the dead and turns out to be the glorified Son of Heaven. And he thinks back to that like, oh my goodness, what a moment that was for me in my life, where Jesus did this thing for me. And yeah, it was kind of weird, and yeah, it was sort of inappropriate, but also it's so humbling, so moving to be loved by him like that. What an unbelievable thing. And then he has to remember that Jesus did exactly the same thing for Judas. That the kind of precious experience that he'd had to remember and think about was something that was also just given to the guy who betrayed them all. And that's sort of uncomfortable. And what it shows us, of course, is that Jesus' love is extended even to our enemies. That he loves anybody and everybody. He loves people who are utterly undeserving of it, like us, of course. And so as you think of people that you might know, it's challenging when we realize that his love is just extended to the people that we might not want it to be extended to. Like even the person who made your childhood a misery. Jesus loves them. And even the ex-partner or the previous boss who was cruel to you, Jesus loves that person. Even the person who's betrayed you or cheated you or lied to you or hurt you profoundly, Jesus loves that person. And that's quite uncomfortable. But it's really important, because if Jesus wouldn't love our enemies, well, then he definitely wouldn't love his enemies. And if he wouldn't love his enemies, then I don't think he would love me. Because Romans 5 tells us, while we were enemies of God, Christ died for us. It says, very rarely will someone die for a righteous person, though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus' love extends uncomfortably far to people that you think it shouldn't extend to. But that's the only love that's on offer. Let me do another one. I think his love is uncomfortably unpredictable. It's uncomfortably unpredictable. So there's this verse that you really want to pay attention to in this passage. And it's verse 3. So it says this: Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, poured water in the basin, and began to wash his disciples' feet. And there's a really important conjunction in that passage that you don't want to miss. It's the word so. It says Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. So he washed his disciples' feet. And that's pretty crazy. Because if you think about it, the Father has given all power to Jesus. So the Father, the creator of the universe, who holds everything that you've ever seen or known or thought about or touched or experienced, all of it in like just one of the lines in the palm of his hand. It's all just there. And he has the ability and the power to do whatever he wants with the thing that he's created. And that authority he gives to his son, Jesus. And so Jesus finds himself at this moment holding the universe effectively in his hands with all authority in heaven and earth. So what's he going to do? Oh, he could do so many things. I could think of loads of things that Jesus might want to do in that moment. All sorts of things that would be amazing or spectacular, or even just things that would be really like incredibly kind, remarkable, changing millions of lives. And he decides to wash his disciples' feet. I mean, that's unexpected at best. It's certainly uncomfortable. Because I can think of lots of things that I would rather he'd done. I don't know about you. I mean, I think back to a time a few years ago where Nick and I lost a little baby to a miscarriage. And we'd seen this coming a few weeks out. And so we'd just been praying like crazy, crying out to God on behalf of this child and our family, just saying, Lord, just show up and do something miraculous in this moment. We need you. And it didn't work out. And then I remember at about the same time, we had a Kingdom Come here. And somebody came to the Kingdom Come who, I won't remember the exact detail, but their ankle was like sort of not right. And we prayed at the front and it was healed. It was healed. And of course, I'm delighted that there was a healing. Who wouldn't be? But if I could have picked, I would have had it the other way around. And I suspect they would as well. And that's challenging. But the challenge of the Christian faith is a journey of learning not to be God. It's a journey of learning that we aren't him, and he's not like us, and he gets to decide. And there might be ways in which we feel like he should have loved people differently, and it would have been better if he had, but we need to learn that we're not God. It says in Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. In fact, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my thoughts and my ways are higher than your ways. And let me be super clear. Like one day when Jesus returns, he will right every single wrong. And it says in Revelation, he will wipe away every tear. And I have no doubt that he will do that. But in the meantime, we're going to need to live with the uncomfortable, unpredictable love of Jesus that will do things like wash people's feet when we'd rather that he'd do something else. Let's do one more. The last thing is that his love is uncomfortably close. It's uncomfortably close. I've got a friend called Seven. I don't know why. Well, he's actually called Daniel, but his middle name's Seven. His mum and dad wanted him to be called Seven, but they also wanted to give him an out. So they put Daniel as the first one, Seven as the middle. Anyway, you didn't need to know that. But Seven, maybe it fits the name, he's quite like an alternative kind of person. So when we were at uni together, he just didn't wear shoes. That was his thing. Didn't wear shoes. We'd go to Tesco, wouldn't wear shoes. Go to lectures, wouldn't wear shoes. Go into town, wouldn't wear shoes. Like, that was his thing. And he had a theory that if you don't wear shoes, then your feet harden up, and then you don't need shoes. So then that's just a win-win. It's obviously a ridiculous theory, and now he wears shoes. But at the time, he didn't. And I remember one time we went to a wedding together. Okay. Now, thankfully, he'd realised that it would be quite rude, potentially, to turn up at a wedding not wearing shoes if the bride and groom hadn't asked you to do that. And so he wore shoes to the wedding. Everything was fine. It worked. And then after the wedding, we were walking to the wedding reception, and Seven managed to stand in some dog poo. Okay. And at this point, he uttered like an immortal line that has gone down in our friendship group forever. He looked down at his shoes, he lifted up his head, and he just said, "This is why you don't wear shoes." Okay, which of course we've mocked him for forever since then, because it's exactly why you wear shoes, right? To protect against things like that. And he still to this day is determined that it would have been better to have not been wearing shoes because he would have noticed it or cleaned it easier or something like that. It's ridiculous. But it got me thinking a little bit about the state of feet, right? Because I don't know about you, but like, I don't have great feet. And I do wear shoes, right? Nick, she has amazing, like, neat, tidy feet. Whereas I have, like, just kind of gorilla claw things. And they're not great. And presumably, Jesus' disciples, like, they have bad feet. They didn't have great shoes. They didn't have stuff to protect their feet or to look after them or whatever. Like, this was grim. And this is something that I would hide away if it were me. You know, if someone said to me now, "Oh, I'll wash your feet," it's like, no thanks. I'll probably hide that away if it's okay with you. And of course, Jesus washing his disciples' feet is not just the act in itself. It's a symbol of what he's willing to do. It's a sign of his humiliation on the cross to wash away the muck that we would carry with ourselves. And there's only one thing that would stop that being effective, and that's if we choose to hold back from him the parts of our lives that we don't want exposed. If we choose to say, "Oh no, that's too ugly, that's too messy, you wouldn't want to see that, I wouldn't want you to see that, I'm too proud, I'm too embarrassed to show you that thing," oh well, then that would be a problem. But Jesus' love is willing to be uncomfortably close, to go all the way to like kneeling at your feet, cleaning the muck off your shoes or off your feet. That's his kind of love. And it's uncomfortable because you need to be willing to open every single part. If you imagine your life a little bit like a house, then you will meet Jesus at the door, but he will not be content to stop that relationship with you until every single door has been opened, every cupboard has been opened, so that he can clear out the stuff that needs to be cleared out and to bring healing and freedom to those areas. In the passage, Peter says, "No, don't do this." And Jesus says, "Unless we do this, you have no part with me." And that's because when we come into a relationship with Jesus, he needs us to recognize that we need it. That this isn't a thing that we could have done for ourselves. And so unless we're willing to allow Jesus to wash us, then we have no part with him. And so today I want to challenge you and to encourage you to let him into every area, into the depths. And if there are bits that you've been hiding and thinking, "No, I don't want to address that now," now's the time. Now's the time.